All right. Well, wanted to start by thanking everybody for being here. We have a really good sampling of folks that do work in campus labs. And so, as we always do every year, this particular workshop is meant to help kind of get you jump started on your strategic planning. As you know, we're kind of getting a little bit closer to our next SAC-COC report. So obviously the reporting that you do this year is really important to make certain that we're doing it correctly and in compliance with what our accrediting agency is, as well as in the case of certainly Bridget and some other, I know Bobby has some accreditation reports that will eventually be due. It will be really helpful for them to kind of look back at some of this reporting and provide it as evidence as they move forward on their next accreditation report. So I'm going to share my screen. I don't want to do all um, a complete lecture on this, but I do have a few slides just to kind of go through and refresh what strategic planning is meant to be. I couldn't do any of this of the assessment if it weren't for the college assessment and accreditation team. I have several of those folks that are on this call, and I really appreciate all of the efforts that they give us throughout the year to help us stay in compliance. So thank you to the cat. The first thing is I know it can be difficult with assessment, especially if you've never done it before. So I just want to invite all of you, if it's whether it's your first time through or your 2011th time through, please reach out if you need feedback. If you get stuck, you don't necessarily know what to say, please feel free. That is my job, is to really help you through all of this process. So you don't hesitate to call me up, and I'll be glad to help. So kind of where we are today, our agenda is going to be kind of that refresher course on what assessment looks like through SAC-COC, a refresher on how to enter our assessments in Anthology, and then talk about for our program coordinators the kind of a review of that SLO improvement plan, and then any questions that you might have for the good of the group. So where are we in our accreditation timeline? So as we know, June 22, the SAC-COC board reaffirmed our decennial accreditation, so we're good up for another decade, but we have a fifth year interim report that is an abbreviated report that's going to be due on September the 15th. So right now we are in that 3-year window of collecting data. And everything that we've been doing, starting with last year up through this year and through the end of 2026, will go into the report that we'll be writing probably during the early part of 26 into the summer of 26, and then on into 27. So a lot of good things coming. So when we do that we do this for our SACS accreditation, but also for those of you who have gone through in our allied health, as well as this year it was business and CIT. There's a question on the new program review template for CPE in which they ask you to describe your assessment processes. They want to ask you to explain how results of assessments have been used to make specific improvements to the program. So if you're doing your student learning outcomes properly in your outcomes, then this is a really easy one for you to answer. Um, and then, of course, we have SAC-COC. They have several standards such as 8.2.A, which has to do with academic programs, and C, which has to do with student support services. So everyone on this call, and that is, they require the institution to identify outcomes, assess the extent to which it achieves the outcomes, and provide evidence of seeking improvement based on analysis. So those are two different standards that we're responsible for. When we look at SAC-COC, there are a couple of programs that are typically very often non-compliant. The offsite review, which is typically done in the spring of the year, it is the number 6 most cited at that review. 47% let me go back. 47% of our institutions are deemed to be non-compliant at the offsite review. And right now I am doing offsite review for three different institutions, and one out of the three were compliant on 8.2a. Then once we get to September, October, they have an on-site visit. They've had a chance, institutions have had a chance to respond. That number drops from 47 to 22%. So at that point, it becomes the number two most cited. And then they have an opportunity to respond one more time, but still at the board of directors review, the number one most cited is this 8.2.A, and 9% of institutions are still not in compliance. And we never want to get anything, for us, we never want to get beyond that offsite. We really want to cruise through the offsite so that it never gets down to that third level of review. But just so we know that program assessment of general education, of not general education, but of program SLOs is something that we have to have an eye on. And then 8.2.C, that's going to be academic and student services that support student success. It's the ninth and the fourth and the second most cited whenever we look at whenever they are going through that SACS review process. So the reason that we're doing this workshop today is just to make certain that before we get to 2027, that we're doing our reviews properly so that there won't be any issue with us being compliant at that off-site review. So every year, in the fall of the year, the college assessment and accreditation team goes through every one of our units, strategic planning and anthology. And we typically year after year, we find a kind of a list of issues. But in typically, some of those issues that we see is that, when we look at outcomes, there's a list of activities that are really difficult. They can't tend to grow and morph over time. So, for one outcome, I've seen some units have 7 or 8 or 9 activities that make it really difficult for them to determine whether or not they were successful. We also see sometimes we see too many performance measures. It's really, I think at the most, if you can define an outcome or measure an outcome with one performance measure, awesome. But I've seen some that are being measured by 5 or 6. And to me, that means that, if you have 5 or 6 performance measures, then maybe we're not measuring the right thing. Maybe it needs to be split into multiple outcomes. But those are some things to kind of think about as you look at your outcomes. We also have found sometimes that measures don't directly measure the outcome. So measure, for example, if we have an outcome that measures retention, there might be a measure in there that measures enrollment instead. So it's really important to make certain that our measures line up with the outcome. And then obviously the most critical piece is that sometimes our outcomes don't get completed at all. Then obviously that's a bigger issue and a definite compliance issue for as far as SACS is concerned. Whenever we look at some more of those common issues, probably the most difficult thing is misuse of the use of results field when we talk about improvement plans. The standard talks about providing evidence of seeking improvement based on analysis of the results. So we typically do really well on identifying those outcomes. We do really well on assessing the outcomes. But providing evidence of seeking improvement is really where most institutions fall short. So to demonstrate that third part of the standard is, you have to pass 2 tests, and these are the tests. Number one, the thing that you said you would do last year to improve, assess it. Was it effective? Was it not effective? And then how do you know it was effective? And explain why or why not. And so I provide for you guys every year, some sample boilerplate language that I guarantee if you use this language in your use of results field, you will always be compliant. So you say something like, last year I said I would, and then put your improvement plan details from the last year to improve results for this outcome. I believe that this was or wasn't effective because, and then put your data informed reasons here. So what this might look like, for example, um, last year, I said that I would send an extra text message to students not yet enrolled to improve results for this outcome. I believe that this improvement plan was effective because we saw 42 students enroll in the next few days after the messaging. So it's really helpful to kind of see how this lines up and how this is used. So I would encourage you. I'll send out these slides. That way you have access to that boilerplate language. And if you use that template, I guarantee you we won't have any problems, not only when the college assessment and accreditation team looks at your outcomes this fall, but also in 3 years whenever SAC comes calling. And I have to write the report for it. We also find some improvement plan issues sometimes. Sometimes we just don't have an improvement plan. Um, either it's blank or we might see something that says we're going to continue to monitor or no improvement needed. The problem with continue to monitor or no improvement needed is that you can't assess that improvement plan in a future cycle. So there's no way for you to say, okay, what I did last year was continue to monitor. You can't improve on that. So there always needs to be some kind of improvement plan. I talked a little bit before. Our improvement plan might not directly align with the outcome, so you might have a retention outcome that focuses on an improvement plan that's built around recruiting. So making certain that our improvement plans can directly affect the outcome is really important. A third thing that we see is like vague or non-committal language, like, we might try this or we need to improve this. We really need to be very explicit in our language, saying next year we are going to dot, dot, dot. Just being very committal, I think, is helpful to determine, whether or not we have a good improvement plan. Some other things that we see often, you all are subject matter experts in your own fields, and so depending on the field that you're in, you're going to have some set acronyms. I would just encourage you that if you throw in acronyms, make sure that you spell them out. Try to be real careful not to use a lot of overly technical jargon. Always think about the outside reader, because at some point there will be an outside reader that looks at your reports to determine compliance. So, trying to avoid too many acronyms. And then another thing that we see from a year is every year is that some people just copy their outcomes or their analysis from one year to the next. So that's a red flag for a reviewer. Um, I'll tell you this, in a couple of the institutions that I'm reviewing this spring, I saw a lot of copy paste, and obviously that's an issue that has to be addressed. So make certain that we're not copy pasting, watch your technical jargon, all of that. Another thing that I found to be really helpful to me is whenever I create my improvement plans for all of my outcomes, one of the things that I always do is I just print them out whenever I'm done with them in May. And they really, for me, are a to-do list for the next year. That way, I know what I need to be working on, and I don't get to May and it's like, oh, darn, I forgot to do this or I forgot to do that. I said I was going to do it, but I didn't. So obviously it's really important just to kind of be printing out your improvement plans. Just put them in some place where you know that you're going to be referring to them. Put them on a whiteboard. Put them in a reminder in your Outlook. Whatever it takes to remind you to be working those improvement plans. Okay, so that kind of covers some of the issues that we saw. Before we move on into kind of a tutorial, how we complete our outcomes. Are there any questions or anything that I haven't covered so far? Okay, so let's look at our outcomes. So to get there, we go to to get into Anthology, we go to the HEC homepage, and then we go to the faculty and staff homepage from Quick Links. And then we scroll down a little bit, and it's going to want us, this fourth tile here is Anthology Campus Labs Platforms. So I'll click on this tile, and it's going to take us to a page, a landing page with three different options. We're going to click on planning because we're doing strategic planning efforts here. So click on planning, and then it may require you to put your login in. My login is already cached, but just so you know, it's going to be the same username and password that you use for your computer when you log on in the morning. All right, so you'll see probably a dashboard that has a bunch of plan items. The really the best thing to do is to click on plans first. It looks like the three dots connected by two lines. And then kind of that first thing to do is to click on, make certain that you're defaulted to fiscal year 2025 because that's the year that we're going to be doing our planning in. And then you should be able to navigate from there down the hierarchy. So if you're in, say you're an allied health program, you can navigate through academic affairs into allied health, and then medical assistant, for example. And you'll notice for pretty much all of the outcomes that I'm responsible to provide data for, you'll notice that it says data provided. That what that means is that I've already gone in there and I've already provided data for you for this year. And to this point, I've provided data for every outcome except for one, and that I'm responsible for except for one, and that is for Mark's program in the employer's report. I was just informed that the surveys just went out, so I'm waiting for those surveys to come back before I can put data in that group, in that particular outcome. But typically, whenever you're ready to start doing your reporting for the year, you're just going to go into your unit, and I'm just going to step into one of my outcomes. I'm going to look at outcome number 32. Uh, I'm sorry, we'll do 25, which is administrative processes meet the needs of learners, the college, and the system. So I'm going to click on that. This is an outcome that evaluates how effective my survey processes are in my department. So I've got a small list of activities. My methods of assessment are the LEI response rates in the MyHCC survey. And then, my goal is to get 25% response from the HCC survey and then 35% response rate from the learner evaluations in the fall. Um, so, so what you'll do is the first thing that you'll do, if I haven't already provided data, then you'll type in the data. I'm just going to put in some dummy data just for fun. And so, say for example, I had 28% response rate on the MyHC survey, and then let's say the learner evaluations were 33%. Okay. And normally I would make this a little more verbose, but I'm just for the sake of time, I'm just putting that in there. So if I look at this, it looks like I met my benchmark for my HCC, but I did not make the benchmark for learner evaluations. So I'm going to come down to analysis, and I'm just going to analyze the data. So I'll say for my HCC survey, and then for the learner evaluations. Okay. So we're gonna look at so we've got this analysis. The next thing that I need to do is this use of results. And in use of results, what we're doing is we're reflecting on the effectiveness of Leicester's improvement plan. So what that's going to require me to do is look at last year's improvement plan if I don't have it written down. So what I can do is I can go back and I can look at fiscal year 24 and I can look at this exact same outcome and look at this improvement plan. And I said my improvement plan last year was I'll reach out to my peers who are using alternative survey platforms to determine if there's a more effective platform for both learner evaluations and general surveys. If deemed to be one, then I'll add that to our SNA request for 25-26. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this text and I'm going to go back to fiscal year 25, the exact same outcome, and I'm going to do very simple boilerplate language. I'll say last year I offered this improvement plan. Okay, so I put that improvement plan out there, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to assess it. I'll say something like, although our outcome was mixed, I did reach out. I'll say something like, I did reach out to my peers and found a survey platform. We put it in the SNA. And so, and then I'll say something like, I feel like this was effective or not effective. So, putting, reflecting on that last year improvement plan, that's what we're going to have to do. Just go back, assess it, determine whether or not it was effective. And then based on this user results, then we want to make an improvement plan for the next year. So we're identifying changes that may be needed in the year ahead to help improve on the results for this year. So my improvement plan might be that, if it's approved for the budget, my improvement plan might be to implement the new survey system. So that's essentially how we go about doing each of our outcomes. I'm going to erase these because these are these are kind of sample outcomes. But what you're going to do is you'll just go through every outcome under your purview, and you should be able to take care of each of those outcomes, and that's essentially how we do that. Are there any questions about how we work through our outcomes from a technical point of view? All right. Well, let's finish up with just a couple of more important points. Um, so one thing that's really important, and I'll go back into it, but once you've filled out all of your data, your analysis, user results, and improvement plan, you need to mark the progress for your outcome as completed only. Don't use outgoing or any other status. Those are administrative things, but just use completed, because what that does is that lets me know that you're done reporting for the year. So make certain that and I'll show you back in this. So if we go back into this outcome, you'll see the progress. So you'll be down here at the bottom. It's a little counterintuitive, but once you finish your improvement plan, you'll go back to the top and you'll change the progress to completed. Um, so please don't use any of these other statuses, but just use completed. That way I know that it's complete. Okay? So that's that. So another thing that I've noticed is sometimes people will mark their mission statements as completed. Unless we are closing your program, unless we are closing your unit, please don't set your mission statements as completed. Just leave them alone and let them go year after year like they are. Okay. Reminder, a couple of other important gotchas. your current year for reporting is fiscal year 2025. We already talked about that. Also, don't change any dates on any of your outcomes. You do have the ability to do that, but what that does when you change dates on your outcomes, it'll shift it to a different year and it'll disappear from the current year. So don't change any dates. And then to save your work, all you have to do is click outside the field and wait for a green check mark to light up. So say, for example, I'm working in this outcome. I'm typing along. I'm done typing. I can click outside and then I'll get a little green check mark and that tells me that it was auto saved at that particular time. So you don't ever have to save anymore. I've had folks in the past lose whole walls of text because they've whatever something happened that they lost the text. So occasionally you can save it just by clicking outside of the box and it will auto save for you. Okay. Now for kind of a last thing that I have is for our technical program coordinators. Some of you are familiar with this, some not so much. But in addition to our anthology stuff, we have every year we have an additional item that's due at the end of August called the SLO Improvement Plan Template. And this is a one-page document for program coordinators. I will send out the 25-26 version as soon as we're done here. And the idea behind this template is it's for you to report on one of your program SLOs that you would consider to be outstanding from your particular program that might need more improvement maybe than the others. Because what we're going to do is we're going to use that particular instance to document department-wide or program-wide improvement efforts. And this one page is something that I will provide in our report to SAC-COC in 8.2.A for reaccreditation purposes. So it's really important that we get that. Um, and then also we'll provide it to CPE for various program reviews that we do. And essentially, it's just a one-page summary of one SLO in your program. So it kind of looks like this, where you put in the name, and all you do is you put in the name of your program, the specific SLO that you assessed. You might want to briefly describe the assessment that you used, and then give some aggregate scores for the assessment. And then on the bottom of the form, what we want to do is assess the effectiveness of those prior improvement plans that we implemented. We want to talk about whether or not they were effective, why or why not, and how do we know. And I've given you the boilerplate language in that, and then discuss what you're going to be doing in the next year. So this is essentially your improvement plan for the next year. So if you've done everything in Campus Labs or Anthology correctly, you'll be able just to copy and paste that item into your improvement plan template, send it to me and Mike, and you'll be done with that for the year. Um, so it's a pretty short thing. If you've done your outcomes properly, fill out the improvement plan template. I know that in some programs, some program coordinators do like to have conversations with their faculty if they have multiple faculty, and unless you're just a department of or a program of one, it may be a little bit different. But sometimes they do like to talk among their faculty, their adjuncts as well. But certainly this is a pretty easy thing to do once you've completed your outcomes for the year. The last thing that I would just share with you is the due date. So all of our program SLOs, all of our unit outcomes, the due date for those is going to be May 31st of this year. We have plenty of time. We've got 6 weeks between now and then to complete those. And, we do need to get them in before then, because what's going to happen is we'll do some processing and some other things within academic affairs in my office based on what you've completed at that point. And then if you're a program coordinator, those SLO improvement plan templates, they're going to be due August the 31st. Um, That way, certainly you're welcome to get them in by the May the 31st. That's helpful. But if you want to wait until August to have a little more conversation with your faculty in your program at that point, sharing with them what the improvement plans are for this upcoming year, that's always helpful too, and you can document that in the template. So that's all that I have. Are there any questions, anything that I didn't cover? Again, the bottom line looks like John's raised his hand, but again, the bottom line is if you have problems, if you have questions, I'm just a DM away or call me on Teams. I'm happy to answer. John, I saw that you have a question, so go ahead.
I just wanted to double check if we wanted to go in and review all the standards and everything, where can we go just to go and read up on everything, accreditation standards?
Sure, that's a great question. So, we can go to sacscoc.org and we can go down to, let's see, where is it? Accreditation standards. And there's a copy. It's a real page turner. I'm telling you. They have the 24th edition of or 24 edition of Principles of Accreditation, um, which basically has all the standards in it. And they also have the resource manual, which is really, really helpful because what it does is it kind of unpacks some of those standards and makes it a little bit easier to understand and read. So right now it's downloading, so it's a pretty big document. Just going to saccoc.org and then clicking on the resource manual or the standards manual will allow you to have access to those and kind of read up. So that's a great question, John. Any other questions? Anything that I didn't cover? Super. Well, I appreciate everyone being here. Thank you so much, and we'll be in contact. If you have any questions, please reach out. I'm happy to help. Y'all have a great day.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Brian.
Brian.
Thank you.